Starting off at number 10 now, we have the Hampton Court Palace ghost. In December 2003, security cameras at Hampton Court Palace in England had a problem with a fire door that just kept opening when nobody else was around. They decided to check the security tapes, and to their absolute horror, these are the images they saw. Some sort of skeletal figure opening the doors before retreating back inside. A spokesperson for the palace assured the public that this was not a joke and they have not manufactured these pictures, saying they genuinely do not know who or what it is. Moving on now to number 9, we have Pogo the Clown. Now for many people, this picture by itself may be terrifying enough. It's a picture taken of Pogo the Clown, taken sometime in the 1970s. Even for an old picture, there's something not quite right about it. People just feel uncomfortable when they view it, and there may be a very good reason for that. The man behind the clown makeup is actually John Wayne Gacy, one of America's most notorious serial killers. During the 1970s in Chicago, he lured 14 young men and boys to his home and tortured them before killing them. He hid their bodies in the crawl space of his own home, where he lived with his wife and 2 children. They had no idea what was going on. By day though, he was Pogo the Clown, appearing at local children's parties to entertain them or potentially even scope them out. He was so popular that he even met the mayor, who thanked him for all the joy that he spread. In 1994, he was sentenced to death by lethal injection. One of his final quotes from an interview was simply, "The dead won't bother you, it's the living you have to worry about." Moving on now to number 8, we have Telling Grandin. That's the name of the old scrapbook where this picture comes from. Its 28 pages contain photographs collected by an Evanston, Illinois group during a visit by train to the New Orleans Carnival of 1903. Perhaps in person and viewed in the context of their own time, this picture of a woman in a dress and a mask would seem entertaining, I guess. Many people these days though feel quite the opposite about it. Some have described it as very disturbing, creepy and deeply unsettling. It's been over 100 years since this picture of a carnival goer was taken, and yet the picture has found its way into many lists like this and keeps people coming back to study it and examine why exactly it's so very creepy. For me though, it's those eyes, or rather lack of eyes. What do you guys think? Moving on to number 7 now, we have Omar. Of all the pictures in this video, I don't know many that seem as unassuming as this one when you first look at it. This is a picture taken in the town of Omar, Northern Ireland. It was taken on the 15th of August 1998, a day that would go down in history. Nobody in this picture knew that the red Vauxhall car parked right there actually contained a bomb inside. It was placed there by a splinter group of the IRA who opposed the ceasefire that ended the troubles in Northern Ireland a year before. They had phoned the police to tell them about the bomb so that they could move people away. Warnings were inaccurate though, and police had inadvertently moved people towards that red car with the bomb in. Moments after this picture was taken, the 500-pound bomb went off. 29 people were killed, over 200 were injured. Incredibly, the man and the child in the foreground of this picture survived, but the person who took the picture was killed. Next up at number 6 now, we have gas mask. There are rumours that this creepy picture comes from a small Japanese island where locals are forced to wear gas masks to protect themselves from the toxic fumes of a nearby volcano. In reality though, it appears to be a picture showing members of the Young Pioneers youth group in Soviet Russia donning their gas masks during a civil defense drill near Leningrad in 1937. The government-run group took this picture as a sign of strength, meant to show the whole world the efficiency and preparedness of the youth organization. For many people though, it's just a haunting image of faceless children staring you down. Coming in number 5 now, we have Tyler Hadley. I find this picture very disturbing. Again, it's one of those pictures that needs the backstory for you to truly understand how dark it is. The guy on the right is Tyler Hadley, age 17 at the time. He had sent a text out to his friends earlier that night inviting them to a party at his family home in Port St. Lucie, Florida. He finished off the text by saying, "Don't worry, parents won't be here." That sentence is incredibly scary when you learn that Hadley had just beaten his own parents to death with a crawl hammer in their own bedroom. He then partied with his friends on the ground floor of the house. None of them had any idea what had happened. One of them actually took this now infamous picture with Hadley himself. He then told one of his friends what he had done. The friend found the bloody bodies in the bedroom and called the police. Tyler was sentenced to 2 life sentences without the possibility of parole. Moving on to number 4 now, we have ectoplasm. This picture is said to be from a medium in a trance while contacting the dead. The strange substance streaming across the picture is allegedly ectoplasm. For many years, photos like this were quite common, claiming to show ectoplasm oozing from orifices in the medium's body. They claim that spiritual entities drape this substance over their non-physical body, enabling them to interact in the physical and real universe. Among modern day believers though, this picture has become famous due to its mysterious origins. Nobody is quite sure who the onlooker is. Nobody knows who the spiritual medium is. Some people even speculate that they are not a willing participant in this, that they do not want to enter into the trance and speak to the dead. Either way, the striking picture is enough to jog anyone's imagination. Next up at number 3 now, we have the hidden mother. This is a picture of a very common practice back in Victorian times. Back then, early cameras had slow exposure times. They required the subject to stay still for a long period of time. Obviously, this is very difficult to do with children. They rarely sit still. If the family wanted to have a picture of just the children, this is what they would do, the hidden mother trick. The photographer would cover the mother in a shawl so they could sit there and hold their child still. It was a popular technique at the time, but it's left us with many creepy pictures like this. Moving on to number 2 now, we have Travis Alexander. This is the last ever picture taken of Travis Alexander. It was taken by his ex-girlfriend Jodi Arias while he showered. Moments after the picture was taken, she stabbed him nearly 30 times, severing his jugular vein. She then shot him in the head with a shotgun. A medical examiner later determined that he was likely already dead before the gunshot wound was inflicted. This had come after she had stalked him, accessed his Facebook account, and slashed his car tires. Some people have said that by zooming in on Travis's eye, you can actually see Jodi Arias before she attacked. She was charged with first-degree murder in 2013 and sentenced to life in prison. And finally, number 1 now, we have the vampire heart. This is the mummified heart of an alleged vampire called Auguste de la Grange. He was said to be responsible for the deaths of more than 40 people in the early 1900s in Louisiana. The victims were all found dismembered in their own homes. One thing the crime scenes all had in common was the distinct lack of blood present at the scene. After police efforts to catch the murderer yielded no results, locals began to believe that the murderer was actually a vampire. A local Catholic priest called Father Henry Yante took it upon himself to bring an end to these murders. During his investigation, he claims to have met minions of the vampire who confessed that Auguste de la Grange was the head vampire. The priest confronted him in his home and drove a wooden stake through his heart. Today, his skeleton and heart can be seen at the Vampire Museum in New Orleans.
Number 10. Mount Pony. In 1969, the Federal Reserve built a 400-foot-long bunker in Virginia with steel reinforced concrete over a foot thick. It is also covered by multiple feet of dirt and surrounded by fences and guard posts. The computers within the facility are the central node for all American electric money transfers. Until the 1990s, it also served as an extra government facility. For many years after its creation, it stored around $1 billion to rebuild the American economy if it ever fell to a nuclear attack. Currently, it stores the archive of movies from the Library of Congress, but because of it being hardened against nuclear attack, many people believe that the facility is sitting ready to be used in a time of need. The government tries to prevent any photos of the facility being placed online, as having the layout of the facility become public knowledge would remove any secrecy and advantage in the future. Only a few photos of it can be found online, and they honestly look straight out of the back rooms.
Moving on to number 9 now, we have Bud Dwyer. He was a politician and treasurer for Pennsylvania who was exposed for receiving money from a computer technology company so that he would steer a government contract in their favor. He faced a sentence of up to 55 years in prison and a $300,000 fine. He arranged a news conference with dozens of reporters attending, although they were not told what the purpose of it was. Many expected him to just resign, but the reality was much more shocking. After a 30-minute speech, Dwyer produced a Magnum revolver. That's the moment this picture was taken, as Dwyer tried to warn reporters to not intervene. Before they could, Dwyer put the gun in his mouth and pulled the trigger, killing himself instantly. Most media outlets chose to not show the full footage, and many newspapers just posted this now famous image. Moving on to number 8 now, we have the Cooper family photo. This is a fairly famous one that many of you guys may have seen. I know I've talked about it somewhere. The story goes that in the 1950s, the Cooper family of Texas bought an old house and moved into it. On their first night there, they took a photo of the mum and grandma posing posing with two kids at the dining room table. When they developed the picture though, this is what they saw. Some sort of dark body was falling from the ceiling behind them. People have been trying to figure out what's going on with this picture ever since it first started circulating online in about 2009. Others have said that the picture is a complete fake due to the lack of information about it and also clues that it's been photoshopped. Still a scary one either way. Coming in at number 7 now, we have the schoolboy. This one was shared by Reddit user In the Lion's Mane. He said he comes from a small rural town near some mountains. One day an old school was being torn down. A family friend went there and he took this picture with his phone. He didn't see the boy standing there until later on. The whole family was freaked out beyond belief. Standing right there was what looked like the actual spirit of a little boy. His face was clearly defined, but his body began to fade around his torso until his legs just tapered away. What do you guys make of this one? Is this a former student rising up to say a last goodbye before his old school disappears forever? Next up at number 6 now, we have John Torrington. He was a British officer who took part in an Arctic expedition in 1846 but died of pneumonia aged 22. Nobody knew what happened to the crew until some of their graves were found on a remote Canadian island. In the 1980s, scientists dug through almost 5 feet of permafrost until they hit a coffin. They opened it up and this was staring back at them. The body of John Torrington, quite literally frozen in time. The eyes were open, still bright and blue. His skin was battered and bruised but barely decomposed. The Arctic climate had acted like a perfect freezer. Scientists took samples to study and then buried his body as they found it, where it could still look the same to this day. We have the demon. This one has been circulating online for a number of years now, but the origins of it are a bit of a mystery. It was taken in a hospital room shortly before a patient died. You can just about make out the patient lying in the bed, but the most shocking thing is what's standing on the bed. Some sort of demonic figure hunched over with huge twisted limbs. Many who have shared the picture claim that it's not just some sort of demonic-like figure. They say it's an actual picture of a demon caught tormenting a patient and trying to take them to hell in the last few hours of their life. Next up at number 4 now, we have the Amityville ghost. This photo was allegedly taken inside the famous Amityville house in 1976. That house was the site of a brutal murder of a family, and many paranormal investigators have been drawn to it ever since. It features what appears to be a young boy peeking out of a doorway. The picture was taken by an automatic camera that took infrared pictures to capture the second floor landing during the night. This picture of the Amityville ghost boy has left some speculating that it could be the ghost of the murdered child of the family, John DeFeo, who had lived in the house with his family prior to the current occupants. Others say this is an accidental picture taken of one of the investigators, but it certainly looks like a little boy to me. Moving on to number 3 now, we have the Grand Canyon. This picture was posted to Reddit by user Zombie Gaddafi. He said it was a photograph of his uncle at the Grand Canyon. At first glance, it looks like a normal picture. That is until you notice the hooded man standing in the bushes. Neither the photographer or the uncle noticed the man standing there. In fact, they swear there was nobody else even in the area, leading many to believe that the explanation for this appearance must belong to the paranormal. Coming in at number 2 now, we have the Phoenix Lights. In 1997, thousands of people witnessed floating lights all over the city of Phoenix. This was the famous event that really hasn't had much press ever since. Witnesses claim to have observed a huge arrow-shaped UFO containing 5 spherical lights or possibly light-emitting engines on. Even the governor of the time who saw the lights described them as otherworldly. One UFO advocate claimed to have performed a spectral analysis of the photographs that apparently proved the lights could not have been produced by a man-made source. Explanations since have ranged from military flares to atmospheric conditions and yes, of course, visitors from another planet. What do you make of them? And finally, number 1 now, we have Jeremy Bentham. He was an English philosopher known as the founder of modern utilitarianism. When he died in 1932, he left his body to science and then for it to be permanently preserved for display. It all went well except for his head. The story goes that the taxidermy process left his face looking horrifying after a while. As it was on display and the authorities didn't want to alarm people, his head was replaced with a wax substitute. For some reason though, they decided to put his his real head on the floor between his own legs. This is the sight that visitors saw on their arrival before people realised that it's probably best to just store the scary looking head someplace else. Alright, and finally I'm going to do a bonus one now because I actually had too many, if you can believe it. This one is called Combustion. This is a shocking image from December 1966. It's the remains of the body of 92-year-old Dr. J. Irving Bentley. He was discovered in his Pennsylvania home by someone who was coming to read the meter. This is the scene they found. All that was left was Dr. Bentley's leg and slippered foot. The rest of him had been burned to ashes from an unknown internal chemical reaction. In the years since, many have held this picture up as a prime example of spontaneous combustion, a mysterious event in which some people seem to explode and burn on the spot for seemingly no reason at all. Maybe you have the explanation for this one though, I'd love to know. Starting off at number 10 now, we have the uninvited guest. This is a creepy picture originally posted to Reddit. The user said that everyone in this picture knew each other at the party. All the people you see in the light, well, everyone except for one single person. In case you haven't spotted it yet, take a look at the far right of this picture. There you can see a boy with glowing eyes. He's standing in the shadows and appears almost translucent. The person who took this picture said they posted it to Facebook the next day and asked every single other person in the picture if they knew who that face belonged to. No matter how hard they tried, none of them did. While some of them have chosen to forget the picture altogether, others who were there that night have never been able to forget that boy's face. They believe it's the spirit of a child from years before wanting to get in on the party. Ugh.
Number 9. Maid of Harlech. While secret government facilities are one thing, it can be hard to believe that it's illegal to photograph something that you might just stumble upon on an afternoon walk. A plane that was nicknamed the Maid of Harlech crashed off the coast of Wales back in September of 1942. The pilot lost control during a training exercise and the plane crashed, though the pilot did walk away in pretty good shape. The plane is under around 2 meters of water and only becomes visible when the tide conditions are just right. The wreckage has never moved in all this time, and while its actual location is kept under wraps, it is in a public area that we assume anybody can access. However, you may find yourself in some legal trouble if you saw it and try to take a photo of it. The Protection of Military Remains Act prevents the location of any military remains being publicly shared, so any photos of the plane that give away its location are quickly removed from the internet and are not allowed to be seen. Number 8. Tiananmen Square. While this image is not forbidden for the majority of us to look at, it is forbidden for around 1.5 billion people. In 1989, student-led demonstrations in support of democracy took place in Tiananmen Square in China, the protesters attempting to stop military movement on the location. The government of China then declared martial law, and they used their military alongside massive tanks to run down any protesters that tried to remain in the square. Because of the horrific nature of the event, the Chinese government has attempted to cover up the fact that the event in 1989 ever happened. Every year on the anniversary, they undertake a massive censorship campaign to ensure that nobody is talking about the event. Many people in the country have no idea that it ever even happened. But we have access to one of the most infamous images from the event, a protester standing in front of an advancing tank. While we can view it whenever we like, people in China are strictly punished if they ever even speak of what happened. Number 7. North Korea. Similarly to the censorship that takes place in China, North Korea often covers up the reality of what goes on in their country. But while they do hide it from their own citizens, they also hide it from any outsiders who may try to get a peek at how the country operates. Information going in and out of the country is strictly controlled to maintain their image, so if you ever want to visit, you'll probably have a pretty difficult time. Anyone who wants to enter the country must be accompanied by an escort, and you are only allowed to see pre-approved parts of the country, which are typically staged in order to look much better than the reality. While you may be allowed to photograph these areas, photographs of anything else will be destroyed and could land you in pretty serious trouble. The main thing they want to avoid anyone seeing is the major poverty in the country, with most families actually undertaking very hard labor jobs. There are also other rules, like how you are not allowed to photograph a statue from behind. So So if you do manage to get one of these pictures, you're very lucky and very brave. Number 6. Iranian missile launch. One of the main things that governments all across the world like to cover up is their military power. They don't want you to know just how much power they're packing until it's already too late. In 2019, the Iranian government was conducting a missile test launch that went terribly wrong. It resulted in a large explosion that destroyed the whole facility they were operating out of. This occurred when tensions between Iran and the rest of the world were at an all-time high. So Donald Trump, of course, tweeted out a satellite image of the testing site. While it may seem like a normal picture, the United States military became furious and wished that the photo had never been released. This is because of just how clear it is. They didn't want people knowing the extent of just how powerful their satellite cameras are. From the image alone, people were able to find out the location and name of the satellite that took the photo. The government attempted to redact the image and prevent any more people from seeing it, but it was on Twitter and it was already too late. Number 5. Area 51. Area 51, the infamous government base in Nevada, was not even publicly confirmed by the government to exist until 2013. Honestly, way more recently than I thought it was. They stated that it was a military testing site, but a majority of the public believe that it's home to aliens and all evidence thereof. Because of the maintained secrecy surrounding the base, you are not allowed to fly in their airspace, and any pictures of the facility are pretty strictly prohibited. However, in 2020, one pilot managed to lie their way into getting the most up-close and clear footage of the facility like ever. In 2020, the private pilot named Gabriel managed to gain access to restricted airspace by telling them he just wanted to continue his quick route to the airport, them not knowing he was equipped with his GoPro to capture footage of the secret facility. He states how he didn't see any activity around the base, but we are fortunate enough to have the images that show even more of the base's layout, while the government is probably not too happy about the fact that this footage even exists. Number 4. Arnagari. It is a military base in Greece that they seem fully determined to cover up and prevent anyone from knowing anything about it. While you can use Google Earth to see an aerial image of just about anywhere on the planet, there are a few areas that are blurred from your view, and this military base is one of them. It's located in central Athens, and while you can see the building that surrounds it, the full complex is completely pixelated and blurred out. Basically, all images and information about the facility is kept under wraps by the government. Some people believe that it's a military training facility for new recruits, but could also be their military command headquarters. Photos from ground level or of anyone entering or exiting the facility are strictly prohibited. Number 3. Pine Gap. The United States government has multiple facilities that are used for collecting and storing secret intelligence. The Pentagon is probably the most well-known one. However, how publicly known the Pentagon is could be on purpose to distract from the other intelligence facilities that they're trying to hide from the public. One lesser-known one is the Pine Gap surveillance facility that is located in Australia, a crucial base for the United States surveillance of Asia. Because of its importance, they do everything they can to prevent any images of the base making it into public hands. This is because they don't want any information of its layout, operations, or abilities to be known by enemy states and the people that they are collecting information on. Unfortunately for them, it is still possible for the public to actually get pretty close to it, so there are a few images that can be found of the outside. Number 2. X37 Space Plane. The United States military is constantly testing and experimenting with new things, and one of the main things that they have tried to improve in the past is military air travel. Obviously, they wouldn't want any information about these new things to get leaked, with the fear it may end up in enemy hands. One of their most secretive designs ever was the X37 Space Plane, and it landed at the Kennedy Space Center in Florida, the government attempting to prevent any images of this event being leaked. It's an autonomously piloted space plane and was landing there after completing a 2-year mission in orbit, 2 of them apparently being in service. While we do have pictures of what it looks like, its purpose and what technology and capabilities it has remains under wraps. Because of how secretive the government has been with this potential new spy plane, the images that we do have of it are pretty rare, and they're not too happy about the fact that we have them. Number 1. Leaked military hardware. The United States government aren't the only ones who have had leaks of experimental military equipment. The Chinese military also had a similar situation occur, except they accidentally leaked it all on their own. In their magazine magazine titled Modern Ships, they included an image of the new H-6N bomber. While it was purposeful to show off the ship, they didn't intend to show off the new design of the large projectile attached to the bottom of it, experts believing it was built to help with China's territory disputes. As soon as they realized what they'd done, the publishers retracted the image, but it was too late and it was already out there. So they tried to claim it was a computer-generated error, but more pictures leaked online of the actual jet in operation, matching the image in the magazine. The images hit the internet and they lost all hopes of trying to cover it up.